Hello, hello, welcome back. I know COVID-19 and all of the closures, quarantine hit all of us in different ways. And not to go into a long story, but I have been on a big hiatus from this podcast because I had to attend to my brick and mortar yoga studio and wellness center business, which closed for the temporary, and childcare because all of you know I just had a baby. So I am so excited to be back with this incredible episode about my favorite topic, the pelvis. Yes, of course. If you know me, if you've listened to any of these episodes, I love talking about the pelvis because in my years of doing one-on-ones for yoga therapy and the other things I integrate, it's always the pelvis. That's the energetic portal that we're disconnected to. And when we connect to it, so much happens. And so my guest, Dr. Sara Smith, we're talking about what she coins core confidence. So we're talking about the pelvis and yes, that core that every yoga Pilates teacher or personal trainer talks about. But we're going deeper. We're talking about the energy in your core, especially in your pelvic floor, how to access it, how you can use it to be your best self and align with your true purpose. So Sara is a doctor of physical therapy. She's a yoga teacher. She's also an intuitive coach. And so I love it when she combines her Western medical expertise with her intuition and a mind-body approach. And you know I love that because I respect both worlds and I love the integration. She has the unique ability to quickly uncover core hidden blocks and transform them into growth opportunities. Yes, these blocks exist in our body. Yes, sometimes physically, but a lot of times energetically. And in the yogic model of healing, the energetic layer, it cannot be ignored. So one of the things, while I've been in the black hole of COVID-19 and I'm emerging from it, excited to be back, but I was working with my designer to create a new ebook. So it's a 15-page ebook and it's all about natural methods to reclaim your health, boost your immune system using the yogic model of healing, digestive health and nutrition, and more. So you can get your hands on this for free. Just check out the link in the show notes on your podcast app, whatever you're using, or on my website at alissafennick.com. So I'm excited for you to get this because it's chock full of information that will help you right now with whether it's anxiety, whether you're worried about your health, immune system, all of it. It addresses all of it. So check out the show notes, get that, and I can't wait for you to join our conversation with Dr. Sara Smith. Enjoy. Let's dive in. Welcome to the Wild Wisdom Podcast. I'm your host, Alissa Fennick, and this is your space to learn more about the importance of slowing down, taking care of yourself, and the mind-body connection. And most importantly, how to reclaim your health by listening to your body's innate wisdom and reconnecting with the earth. Welcome back, everybody. I'm so excited to have Dr. Sara Smith with us. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, well, I mentioned prior to the call, our guests, or I'm sorry, our audience really love when we talk about the pelvic floor, pelvic energy, pelvic awareness, and today I know we're going to talk about core confidence and that sort of thing. So. And there my dog goes. I'm sure everybody will hear her on the podcast. But I'm very excited to have you on and explore this more. And especially because I know you not only explore it from the physical side as a doctor of physical therapy, but also from the more spiritual, energetic side, which I love as well.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So. The one thing I really love when guests come on the show, and I know our audience does too, is kind of hear your story of how you got into this, because you've gone from the traditional healthcare model in
Mm-hmm.
seeing patients and physical therapy. And now you're combining spirituality, coaching, yoga, physical therapy, and more.
And
So
beyond,
what's your
yes.
story?
Well, I would say it is really one of divine intervention to begin with. My mother and my grandmother really had introduced me to so many of the, I would say, more kind of holistic, energetic practices. So I certainly had from a very early age an interest in that. And I remember being a little girl, you know, running around saying like mind, body, spirit, which is nobody else was doing that at that time. Um, I really actually just for my own safety and energy boundaries, when I got into physical therapy, I kind of always knew that it was going to be a starting point for me, which is
Mhm.
very odd. I didn't really know how to talk about it, but it did feel like I was going to keep expanding from there.
Mhm.
Um, but everything really naturally started unfolding when I began really working as a specialist, so to speak, in chronic pain management.
Mhm.
Um, I just realized that I had this knack for being able to really meet people where they were, and not try to shove them into a box as far as their treatment went when I was dealing with chronic pain, and a lot of that meant neck and back pain.
Mhm.
And from there is where I really started learning about the pelvic floor. There's an incredible researcher named Diane Lee out of Canada, who just has really cracked open the world of pelvic floor physical therapy, in my opinion, as well as so many other great researchers and instructors. But as I started learning the connection about the inner muscles affecting the outer.
Mhm.
And so then my story from there was, I did not like working in traditional spaces. I did not like being in a gym. I really was a very deep thinker. I like to have meaningful conversations with the people that were coming into the clinic with me. And so on the surface level, I just knew that pelvic floor physical therapy was a way for me to work in a room with one person at a time.
Mhm.
But then as I started to do that, I also was experiencing a lot of burnout myself.
Mhm.
Um, so I started to attend some yoga classes, and it was one of the most defining moments in my life because for the first time ever, really understood the amount of tension that I was carrying around in my body, from my past and just from stressful events, on a day-to-day basis. I had no clue. I was not in touch or aware with that piece at all.
Mm. Wow.
And
Mhm.
so I really started diving into the world of yoga, and eventually, like years later, I went to do a certification for yoga that was over a year long, and then really continued my training with her. Her name is Anna Pittman,
Mhm.
with the breathing space, and she's also a transpersonal psychologist. And
Oh.
so
Mhm.
again, like I just kept finding my way into these worlds that were really combining lots of different modalities.
Mhm.
So while I was noticing my own tension, um, and connecting kind of the pelvic floor with the back and the spine and the rest of the body, I started really noticing it. There was just a lot of trauma and past experiences housed within the pelvis.
Mhm.
Um, there was a lot of tension that's being held there. I can totally geek out and talk a little bit more about, the brain to the pelvic floor connection. But I was realizing more and more that I really couldn't effectively get anywhere with my clients if I wasn't acknowledging what was happening up top as far as their thoughts, their stress levels, their need to live urgently, their need to fix everything.
Mhm.
Um, it was very connected, and it was connected with me too. So I went on a personal journey of um, relaxing my body just continuously
Mhm.
all day long. Anytime I noticed that it was tense, I just went on this, like, no one knew I was doing this. I just kind of went on this tension of like, oh, I noticed my abdomen is just cinched up tight. Let me let that go. Oh, my throat feels like it's kind of closing up. Let me see if I can open that. And so I don't want to ramble anymore, but that's the long and short version of kind of how it came to be. I realized you couldn't have one without the other.
Yeah. Well, you're a total kindred spirit because, having that journey and being exposed to different things, and also because you're seeking out yourself. Like we all have our
Yes.
stuff, even if we're experts in certain areas, or we're in the healing professions, or or healthcare professionals, that sort of stuff. Like everybody has their stuff, and
Yes.
it's these things that we do, be it yoga, meditation, the psychology,
Yeah.
that brings the awareness to it. And then
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes we are working with things or attracted to things because we're noticing it in ourselves. And
100%.
yeah, exactly. And so,
Yeah.
so it, but, and I know that's what led me down that path. So listening to your story, I was like, I totally get that. I mean, obviously
Yeah.
different paths, but very similar in like you're starting to get attracted to and want to learn more because you're exploring it for yourself. And
Yeah.
then you probably also found you attract a lot of people like you into your practice.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So much. And one of the things that just made me think about this, to share about my story too, is I got into physical therapy, like a pelvic floor physical therapy, kind of for what I would begin to think on the surface level is just selfish reasons of, okay, I want to work with somebody one-on-one.
Mm-hmm.
But what was fascinating, because we were talking prior to recording this, I was, when I got into pelvic floor physical therapy, I was pregnant with my oldest son.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to say that, because after I gave birth to him, which I did naturally, and it was a pretty, consistent, quote unquote, normal labor without too many complications. Afterwards, I used to kind of joke and be like, I have experienced every symptom that I will treat one day in my clinic. Anything that could happen: incontinence, fecal incontinence, abdominal pain, back pain, hip pain, pelvic pain, urgency of urination, all those things. And they might have come like quickly to me and resolved decently quickly, but it was like I empathetically knew what was going to happen. But what I didn't realize until recently, over the last several years, and my son is almost 7 now, is that when he was born, we pretty quickly learned that there was something unique about him.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was subconsciously housing a lot of fear, control. You have that as a new mom anyway, right? The mom guilt and this and that. And I was housing a lot of questioning and pain and sadness, and it was showing up throughout my body.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it's amazing how that will happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing that, Sarah. I know I've shared in a past episode, so my hips went out at 36 weeks and I was on crutches. And I'm a little loosey-goosey in the pelvic area, but I know I'm tight in other places. And I'm due to see a women's health physical therapist to work on my pelvic floor. And so Natalie, who was in one of episode 32, I told her I'd come see her since she's local.
Yes.
But I know it was fear related because I'm a single mother, and and her father left when I was 6 months pregnant. And I was like, logically in the mind, oh yeah, I can do this. I know I can. Well, I'm doing it.
Absolutely.
I knew that. But my body was like, deep down, that fear was there. And my body was like, I'm scared,
Yeah.
And so I totally, like, it's so true. And especially when we start to notice and become aware of that, like, wow, look what we're holding on to. Our body not only keeps a record and or keeps the score. It's the title of a great book, but it's like, if we really connect and listen, um, it'll tell us what's really going on,
Oh
despite
yeah.
us trying to go through the days and motions and keeping busy. If we come back in, and that's why I'm so passionate about connecting to the body, and I know you are,
Yeah.
because it can tell us so much.
Yeah. It's where all the great wisdom is stored,
Right? Oh, I
you
love
know,
that.
and even in pain. Um,
Mhm.
you know, I saw that as a physical therapist, and I'm sure you have too. You know, I've had, if I cannot even count on my fingers and toes of the hundreds of people who will come in and they'll say, if I could just cut out this area, you know, or if I could just maybe, they just disdain for a body part. And I get that very much, you
Mhm.
know. It's not a judgment, but it would come with this deep sadness of, if we can make it safe enough to have a conversation, then there's usually a lot of wisdom about next steps, you know, because so many people feel overwhelmed. Like even those of us who are like, you know, type A, you know what to do in business, get it done yesterday, really go getters. Sometimes things within your own body, your own life, relationships can get really confusing. And it's really just because you've stepped back into the head and you've gotten out
Mhm.
of the body that houses that wisdom, I believe. It's what
No,
I
I
found.
completely agree with you, and that's why I was like, we're total
Yes.
kindred spirits, because we're on the same exact wavelength, and I love having conversations with people who, like, we think the same way, because
Yeah.
then, for one, I don't feel like I'm alone in my thoughts and how I approach things, because, yeah. On a side note, I have worked in the hospitals as a yoga therapist, and I knew, I was like, this isn't for me. I thought it was what I wanted, and I
Hmm.
was like, no. And so I'm glad it's evolved into this.
Yeah.
But it's nice to talk to people who have that similar thought, and you can see it. And when I mentioned, you probably attract people who are like you end up, when you're working in this space, and following and aligning with your heart's calling, um, working with the people who are ready, like,
Yeah.
eventually, like, of course, it wasn't always that way, I'm sure, but and then who are ready and open to that. Oh, there is a mind body spirit connection.
Yeah.
There is something, why my back keeps nagging me, or my hip or neck. There is a physical reason, but there's also an emotional or energetic reason, and
Hmm.
exploring that. And so it's nice when you get to work with people who are open to that, and help guide them in some way. Because there's
$100%.
so many layers of resolving something. So
Yeah.
yeah.
We're complicated beings of multiple, many systems, you
Right.
know. So
Right.
we have to consider all the systems.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and I know you're very passionate about what you call core confidence.
Hmm.
And so will you explain that to the audience? Like, what is core confidence? And we talked before, and that I'm also passionate about this disconnection, especially for women. Men have it too, of their pelvis, and the physical, the energetic, all of the layers there, but just a real disconnection. And I saw it in my private yoga therapy practice for
Yeah.
years. And then I worked to connect to my pelvis, and I still do. I still
Hmm.
work with that. Um, the example I gave when I was pregnant was a perfect example. But talk about this disconnection and what you call core confidence. I'd really love to hear it.
Oh, absolutely. I love talking about it. Um, so I'm gonna start with the disconnection of the pelvis piece, and I'm gonna start there. So, you know, since the beginning of time, in my opinion, and whatever we define as that of our human race, women have been um, cast aside, you know, not respected. Um, the pelvis has been a very tumultuously charged part of the body. And interestingly, you know, for those of us who are interested and have studied the chakra system, we also see that, fascinatingly enough, it is the seat of our safety and security and a lot of our familial history. So it's a very generational part of the body. And since we carry with us DNA from so many generations prior, at least 7, so we think, you know, it's just a part of the body that we all have been trained, not men in very different ways, but absolutely it's with men too. But we'll talk about women specifically here. Really to think that it's, I always tease and I say, I call it the unmentionable area, because it's one that we want it to work. We want it to work well, and it should never not work correctly. Otherwise, we don't want to think about it. And that's just on a straight physical level, but we don't really want to think about it. It's just such a powerful part of the body that brings about very charged conversations, right?
Well,
Either,
yeah.
you know,
Well, we were
putting it
taught
out there
not to talk about it.
Yes.
And shamed. I remember a client, you know, would tell me, you know, that's dirty, you know, blah, blah, blah. Like her mom said that to her. She didn't say it about herself, but you know, it's like, and so somehow along the line, her mom was taught that. And so it's amazing, like how we're conditioned. And then of course we're disconnected. Years and generations of conditioning like that.
Absolutely. And you know, this is going so far out on a limb for me, but I'm going to just speak my truth, that I think that a lot of that is because in the collective, we realize that there is so much empowerment in this area of our body that if we are to let it out, I think that there's just forces out there that are like, uh-oh, you know, which it's coming. Like, you know, women leaving a legacy and making their mark is happening. It's going to be coming. And in my opinion, I feel like we need to be doing a service to ourselves, as well as men, to connect with this part of the body so that we access real wisdom. Not just like what we think somebody wants us to do or whatever like that. So that's the disconnection of the pelvis in my opinion. And of course there's lots of other reasons, like even just on a straight pain standpoint, if you have somebody who's had chronic pain, chronic leaking, chronic incontinence, it's embarrassing. And so they anywhere in the body that you have pain, you 9 times out of 10 people want to dissociate from it, because if you can't fix something, it's like you just got to keep trying to move on and do the best you can. So it's really something that happens. Now, one of the, you know, research describes this. We see it. We don't even need research to describe it, but thank God there is research out there. Women in general are more prone to, because we are very in community and more familial. Like research shows that when we gather 2 or more, and we're under stress, that we have a stress release hormone cascade that occurs. Okay. And so we're very tribal in nature. Again, not that men aren't, it's just, that's what the research has shown. But interestingly enough too, women are also very prone to not feeling good enough, you know, lack of self-worth, lack of self-confidence, and really looking to external factors to receive that validation. Well, that in my opinion is external confidence. Okay. So like we're constantly wanting to build ourselves up, right? Like right now, I want you to like me. Hopefully, you know, I like you. Like, you know, we're always kind of looking for this validation. I like
you, Sarah. So I
right?
really do.
I know. I love you too.
But you know, I understand exactly.
Yeah. And so we do this because, again, we've learned it. It's just a behavioral pattern. And people call it different things. I call it core confidence. But what I just hugely believe that we're coming back to is core confidence. So when we're core confident, we have a deep trust in the messages and the direction in which we are going.
Mm-hmm.
And it comes from the pelvis. So when I started doing, and I love spirituality. I could just dive into it all day long. A variety of spiritual texts, if you start looking at them, people like to say that it's in the heart, right? Go to the heart, go to the heart, go to the heart. Well, what I have found in really truly diving into spiritual texts is you're supposed to go to the pelvis, and then you come up through the gut, through the heart, through the throat. And when you tap into that true stability, that first chakra, true stability, then you can access your authentic voice. You can access your next step that you need. And so I feel like we need to be using this more in business. I feel like we need to be using this more in our personal lives, in our conversations with others, in our creativity, in our art, and all the above. So that is the long and the short of that.
I love it and completely agree. And I'm a very spiritual person. While I was raised in a Catholic religion, and I've reconciled a little bit of that, but I'm very spiritual. So, when it comes to the energetics, the spiritualities, and that sort of stuff, I love. And, having that trust and faith. I've been talking a lot about that in my Facebook group, the Wild Wisdom Collective, because I found that having trust and faith in yourself, and there's a spark of divinity within all of us, but in something greater than ourselves, whatever that is, whatever that means to people, is really what helps us align somehow and connect with that wisdom, but we have to also connect with ourselves. But I know for me personally, and I kind of have 2 points I want to share. For me personally, it's developing that trust and faith with obviously still working on always, but that's what's helped me get through things. That's what, like with, coronavirus, COVID-19, everybody's freaking out. And I've had a couple of days of anxiety and that sort of stuff, but it's that trust and faith that's actually kept me going. And I'm like, whatever happened, there's a higher reason, blah, blah. But also, like, you talked about the chakras, and when you work with the chakras, which are located in the pelvis, you do have to work on those first. Like, that's what people start to get into, the spirituality or the energetics of something, and they're like all up in the higher ones. And we met those people, and it's like you have to have 2 feet on the ground, and you have to stay grounded. It's also when I explain, when I teach other soon-to-be teachers, or even see clients who are in healing professions or the healthcare professions, and they're with taking on people's stuff all day, sort of stuff. And it's like you have to work on the root chakra and be grounded. There are protection, rituals and things you can do, but you also have to be grounded and have your root and sacral chakras balanced, or more balanced. We're always working on them. But we're not perfect. But
I haven't gotten there yet.
You have to be grounded, and then you won't take on so much of someone else. But the other thing I wanted to mention, and I don't know if you've ever done this, but I'm a huge fan of Mayan abdominal massage.
Yes.
And so in the Mayan culture, the uterus is the second heart of the woman, or even the uterine energy if there's been a hysterectomy. And I always loved that. And I know personally from doing years of Mayan abdominal massage, getting it from a practitioner, that's when I really learned that. And when my uterus was pulled back into place, for one, I think years of that led me to be able to get pregnant. I wasn't like trying. It was, but it was something within my body that I wanted, and within my heart and soul. But I kind of kept it a secret, but my body knew. And so, but I think like working with that energy, the physical uterus and the bladder and all of it, getting everything aligned through Mayan abdominal massage really did help set the stage for me experiencing joy and opening the heart. So I really agree that working with the space of the pelvis, whatever, every layer within it. And I just love that. And I'm thankful for Dr. Rosita Arvigo for working with Donna Lehio and documenting everything and bringing that elsewhere, because it's so amazing. Now that's not internal, work, which I know as a physical therapist would do, but it's still very powerful. And I think every woman should get Mayan abdominal massage and go to a women's health PT, and it's so profound. So I just wanted to, and actually once when I had it took a few sessions because I held tension down. I mean, I probably
of course
in some ways. I remember feeling like when my uterus went into place, like this alignment. Like it was really interesting. Like it's the Sushumna Nadi in yoga, that central channel. And that was crazy. But just remembering it's the second heart. And I love that description, the second heart of the woman. And I love that you shared that you're seeing, in these spiritual texts that we need to work on, the pelvic center, whatever, multiple spirituality, different sort of things talk about. I love that.
Yeah. I mean, I've never actually heard it called the second heart of a woman. But I've had my abdominal massage and had always wanted to actually take one of the courses. So that is, it's like 100% it works, and it's funny, the internal piece is really important. And I can't believe I'm saying this as a pelvic floor therapist, because I used to be on the very other end of the scale of like, unless you do the internal piece, you're really not going to get anywhere. But what I found was that there is so much trauma that you really do have to sometimes meet people where they are. And I use the word trauma very, very lightly, because some people have just had a knee replacement that they didn't know that they were going to come out of surgery a specific way. And it was abrupt to them, and it felt like a violation, and, or, a series of bad relationships, for example, not necessarily abusive relationships. But so I use that term loosely, and I think, so I love how you talked about the tension that you acknowledged that you were feeling, because it was the same thing that I acknowledged on my path. I find for women who are, again, go-getters, wearing many hats, healers, people that care, community focused, probably have a little bit of perfectionism sort of tendencies or whatever, like just across the board, I was just continuously finding, and I think most pelvic floor therapists have found this now too, across the board, that most women are dealing with tension. And you have to take it back to the root, I'm putting that in air quotes, of relaxation, like learning relaxation, learning that, like, I remember one of the practical things that I did, because I was in home health physical therapy for a while. Well, in physical therapy school and in all healthcare, you learn if you do not document, somebody will sue you. Well, I was going like way above and beyond in my documentation, to the point that I was a exceptional documenter, and I was training others in the field how to document well, but it was also taking a toll. And so I had to practice, okay, can I dial down a little bit my need to rebalance myself, so to speak, and to let go of some of the tension. And that process, in my opinion, is a shedding process. It's one of the reasons why I do so much advisorship and coaching now, is that it's a shedding. You get someone to learn to relax their physical body, to relax their schedule, to relax, how they're communicating. And then you take them into the core. That then, like you said, it's another modality of getting that alignment. And when you have more alignment, physical alignment, spiritual alignment, mental alignment, I think you have to find the path of least resistance for each person. And usually once you find the one that works for them, then the others will start, coming in line too, but you have to find that path of least resistance. And once you find that, it's amazing to see the creativity that is unlocked, the energy, the focus, the finally able to follow their dreams, clarity in what they believe in and what they can stand for. And again, it's a big mission, but I just firmly believe that we need women in roles that are living in that particular way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We don't need any more women leaders who are stressed out, who are living in the masculine,
Mm-hmm.
who are constantly trying to climb the ladder to success in a way that's completely burning them out. I don't think we need that.
No, I completely agree. I've actually spoken on leading from the feminine a few times, and and using the feminine principles, and using horses as an example of like, and because they're matriarchal in their hurt, and leading from the feminine. And so I think that's important for people to understand. And maybe we'll have to do a little bonus episode on and talk more about that, because
that'd be fun.
I love that. And I love that we're aligning there, because people, and I'll talk about, I guess that reminds me of, who I am today is very different from who I was 10 years ago, or even starting out in the workforce. Because I've had wonderful bosses, and I remember a woman who I love. She was kind of a mother figure, but she didn't have any children of her own. But at the same time, she was a very masculine energy figure, like looking back. But I remember learning, like, and because I'm everything you described, like the type A person and the perfectionist, like me. And that's why I always say, like, if I can like chill out, everybody can. But and she was like that too. So she liked having me work for her because I was detail oriented and could do that. But there were certain things that I remember going, I'm never going to do that. I'm going to take vacation. I am going to make sure that I don't treat an employee this way, or I'm going to, blah, 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 blah. Because, so I learned from her a ton, but I also learned how I didn't want to be. Now, of course, at that point in time in my early 20s, I didn't know what feminine leadership was, or even anything. Like I told you I want to write a book, and a lot of it is about my journey into connecting with my femininity, because I didn't know what that meant.
Right.
And it wasn't until a woman told me, she came up to me, this older Russian lady I met through a holistic group in Indianapolis, and she looked at me, and I was wearing a dress, and I don't even often wear dresses, but she looked at me and was like, "You're a mix between your mother and father, but you're too much like your father, and you need to hide your balls." And I was like, I said, well, this is why I do yoga and meditation, because I am aware. I'm
trying.
But when you're in the workforce as a woman, and you don't know any differently, especially because a lot of women before us who might have been part of the feminist movement, which we're thankful for, weren't taught either. They're leading with more masculine principles and burning themselves out and stressed out, and work is their life. So that's what we learn. And I know that's what I learned to be like, because I was already, this overachiever, top nurturer, perfectionist, and then brought it to the workplace. And so you're trying to do all these roles, and you don't know there's another way. There's another way to lead and work and be, which without being looked down upon as weak, or that you can't do enough, that sort of thing. And there actually is another way.
Yeah, I was going to say, as a question to you, like, how did you find how has it been balancing those two ways, right? Because you don't want too much of one and not enough of the other. It's really important to incorporate both. So, like, how did you find that you blended those two?
Well, I'm always working on that. But I would say, so with owning the studio and everything now, I know I still led a lot with the masculine energy, and I know that there are people out there who think I'm an asshole. And I don't care. Like I have to let that go, because I can't, not everybody's going to like me.
Yeah.
But when you're running a business, like, it's very different than a lot of personal stuff.
Hmm.
However, at the same time, I know my manager has said to me, like, and she's even mentioned, like, she loves the way, like, I was always be open and upfront with her.
Mm.
And also, when I'd have to shift hours, if something was going on, like, I may not be able to give you enough hours, I'd always be open. And I'd always say, I understand if you need to find something that is more
Yeah.
fitting for you. Like, just let me know, like, communicate with me. And I remember her telling me once that her she wished her husband's boss was like that. They had the conversation that she appreciated that I was always like, while I may not want to cut hours or do this, I understand if you have to go. Like, I was always just open and collaborative with her, and
Yeah.
she
That was
stayed
the
with
word I was
me.
going to use. Yeah.
Yeah,
Communicative
collaboration.
and
Yeah,
collaborative.
that's a feminine leadership principle.
Absolutely.
And so, she was always really appreciative, and I have an amazing team. And I know, you know, I don't know what everybody thinks of me, but I know a lot of people appreciate what I've done. I've also, like I said, no, I've pissed people off too, but I've really tried to be understanding of, I know this isn't your, like, job that you're going to live for, be at or for 20
Right.
years. And you have other lives and other goals. And, how
Yeah.
can I support you?
Mm.
My only regret, honestly, with the studio is that I didn't have enough time to do more goal setting and that kind of nurturing. I'm just run ragged most
Yep.
of the time. But just being open and honest and communicate. And I remember my manager just saying, I really love that because you're just upfront. Like,
Right.
here it is.
Here's the
Or
deal.
I won't try to pretend I'm having a day and I'm grouchy or whatever. I'll just be like, I'll
Yeah.
just be honest. I may not be as, nice today because I'm just not feeling good or something. And she just liked that I would be upfront and whatever. And in turn, like, we've had a great relationship.
Yeah.
And I love that. And even, with the whole COVID-19 stuff, like, we still communicate and have a great relationship. And I just love that. And she could have easily left and been like, I don't need your piddly hours per week.
Right.
I'm leaving. But she enjoyed the environment in which she worked in and the flexibility and, I guess, my leadership.
Absolutely.
So that's, I guess, one example. And that is also from just, those years of learning that I didn't want, if someone wanted to leave, for example, and take a new job that worked better for them, or it's not personal. It's,
Mm.
if for me, it's it's how business is. I mean, like,
Yeah.
it's not the age of someone going in and working 20 years, especially in my fields.
Absolutely.
That sort of stuff and getting a pension, that sort of thing, it doesn't happen. And it's about nurturing and growth. What I wouldn't like, of course, is if somebody came in and, like, used you and then left, sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But I weeded those people out pretty fast. And that's where probably that masculine, but you need to have the masculine
You got
energy
to have
for
it.
that, especially
Yeah.
running a business.
Absolutely.
And so, because there are people who, will take advantage, but there's also just not having you need the synchronicity in a staff. And,
Absolutely.
you need staff as a leader. Here's, look where our conversation's going. Staff as a leader who support and respect the leader, because I see this, and we could talk again a lot more on this, support and respect the leader, but also there's, of course, mutual respect going both ways. And then
Absolutely.
having their skill set, that they're empowered to do their own thing, and there's someone not
Yeah.
micromanaging either.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that can shift and happen. And people just don't know, because I remember when I first became a manager, no one taught me how to manage people.
Oh, right. Or if they do, it's so boring. I have a client right now who I'd been working with for a while who went, to like an administrative, received a business degree,
Mm-hmm.
and she can conflict resolve like the best of them.
Mm-hmm.
But it was still really actually so energetically draining for her, because I like to think of us as a battery, and we
Sure.
only have a
Yeah.
finite amount of energy.
Mm-hmm.
And she's very, type A, professionally driven. I'm going to hard work. I'm going to get the job done. And so she would pour all these kind of resources, into conflict resolution. But then what would suffer at home is her personal life.
Mm-hmm.
And so many of my clients have that. They've got they're hardwired to
Mm-hmm.
make the directorship role work, or make the business work, or whatever. It's just what's happening personally.
Yeah.
But the other thing that I was going to add to what you were saying, and I have a feeling that you were doing this too, is when I have helped women tap into their core confidence, they very in a grounded, but very loving, right? Because you've got to tap into your pelvis, be aware of that, and then filter your wisdom up through the gut, through the heart, and then through the throat, so you can actually speak. And
Mm-hmm.
when you do that, like if you come up into a situation, in running the studio, for example, if you're leading from that place, from that sort of core confidence,
Mm-hmm.
you kind of have an intuition and a connection between the two of you, so you can very easily and more easily conflict resolve,
Mm-hmm.
versus if you're what I call like living up in your head, you're frustrated, you're feeling disconnected, you feel like you've been snowed over, or somebody's taken
Mm-hmm.
advantage of you, or vice versa. Maybe the employee feels that way.
Yeah.
Suddenly there's a disconnect,
Mm-hmm.
and it energetically becomes very challenging to access your wisdom, and because everybody's in protection mode,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so it sounds like too that I would just be curious if some of that came into your, balancing the masculine and feminine, like knowing how to manage people,
Sure.
because you had to learn,
Yeah.
and having the skill set, of holistic wisdom.
Well, probably not intentionally, or like being aware of that at first. But I
Oh
think
yeah.
that developed the more I worked on myself, the more it happened. Because I know I've had instances where, I was totally more in my head, and that was, and I'm really just speaking more towards the studio because I've owned it for 5 years, and while I've
Yeah.
worked on myself for a long time, like especially intensely in the last 5 years, prior to that, I guess, or I wouldn't have ever wanted to open a studio, but like, wasn't, maybe it was on a subconscious level, but not really conscious, but I do know the correlation of when you do get in tune with yourself and you start to do more of that reflection, personal development, connecting with the core, the pelvis, and the root
Yeah.
wisdom, that it naturally comes up and comes
Things are
out.
easier. Yeah.
Yeah, things are easier because it took me a while to get this wonderful, amazing, cohesive staff we have.
Mm-hmm.
And it does, that just is sort of a nature of a business and leadership anyway. But it was just like, now it just flows, and
Yeah.
despite being closed because of coronavirus, but like
Yeah.
I it would just flow, and I could rely on everybody, and they knew how to communicate with me, and I didn't even have tons of time to do a lot of, like I mentioned, training,
Right.
setting reviews, sort of things, but there was just this, yeah, and I guess intuitive is a good word for this, of how to support me as the owner, knowing,
Holding both.
yeah, and
Yeah.
then how to treat and support the closest staff, because we have tons of independent contractors that
Right.
usually wouldn't go directly to me, but that sort of stuff, and there was a lot of that going on. And it was funny, Sarah, I never really thought about it that way, because
Yeah, I want to bring it to the forefront because we
yeah,
all need it. I
yeah.
just have story upon story of like just successes that, relationships and tumultuous professions that just suddenly have ease with them when you just quickly tap into the pelvis,
Mm-hmm.
and do it in this way, you know, and I can share the handout of how I specifically teach it, and then just filter it back up again, and then actually speak, then actually go into the meeting, then actually, you know, talk with your loved one who there's been some,
Well,
you know, stress between.
I would love if you shared that handout with my patrons on Patreon. That would be awesome.
Yeah,
You
absolutely.
know, and because I know we're going to let everybody know about what you offer, and you do like 20-minute consults, or and
Yeah,
that's
usually I'll do a 30. Do you want to
30
go ahead and
minutes.
talk
Oh,
about that? Okay.
yeah. So yeah, we're
Sure.
going to do that, and we're going to do a couple giveaways as
We
well.
are. I
Yeah.
love giveaways.
You
So
want to
I had
share
to do
about
two. I had to do two. So I just kind of, during all of this COVID-19, I opened a private Facebook group that was previously running, but I opened it more to everyone. And so it's for women. It's called the Wild and Bright Sanctuary, and it really is an inner recess of sanctuary where we can get together for inspiration and to keep learning about this concept of core competence and supporting ourselves. So within that, I had decided to create with a local artisan a leather keychain that says have courage and be still, live wild and bright. And so I wanted to give away one of those because I just love the little connection pieces that are possible. And, you know, when you have a message like that, what that means. And then I just love giving gifts. And so I just kept going. So you give me free rein. So I kept going. So then I do have a 30-minute consult call that's always complimentary to see if somebody might be a good fit for me. But I wanted to do a 45-minute core activation session that also can be a giveaway. Yeah,
that'd be great. Well, we're gonna definitely there'll be links in the show notes for all of that so that people can access those, and we'll share it on social media, of course. And I love that you're sharing that. I love giving gifts too, and that's one of the reasons why, like I told you, I've tried to rearrange my schedule since it's been chaos since we closed, because I have no staff to delegate to. So everything came back. And, but also just like the more I rest and like, because I still work, obviously. We all have to work in some way usually. But like the more that I rest, I'm able to do things like that, write the handwritten notes, share more gifts, those things that are very meaningful. And when we're so busy like that, I don't do that. And I really
absolutely.
I always feel bad because I haven't done enough of that for my staff, because I've always been like cranking out everything else. And that, but I love those little appreciation. My grandfather taught me the art of handwriting and writing letters. We always wrote letters to each other.
I love that.
And,
me too.
So I love that. So I love that you're sharing this gift and you thought about that, and it has some special meaning, not only during this time, but just in general to remind people.
Yes.
Wild and bright and
courage to be still.
Yes.
It's a big one. I practice every day.
Exactly. Well, yeah, we have to still do the work.
Right. 100%.
Yeah. Any final thoughts you want to share with the audience?
No, I love that we so synchronistically, randomly, I've found you through the internet, and it's just, I feel like we're instant friends and connectors. And I just really thank you and thank your audience for listening and being interested. And if I may answer any questions, I'm more than happy to do so.
Oh, wonderful. Well, thanks, Sarah. we'll have to talk more offline about all of this stuff, because we have some parallels, some alignment going on, I think. Instant friends for sure.
Definitely.
And I hope everybody enjoys, and definitely check the show notes for a lot of the things that we talked about, and to continue and get to know Sarah and join her Facebook group as well. So thank you, everybody. So, I want to hear from you. What did you think of today's topic? Direct message me on Instagram or Facebook, or better yet, join the Wild Wisdom Collective, my free Facebook group, and chime in on the discussion. I look forward to hearing your thoughts and insight. And if you love what you're hearing, please take a moment to click the button on your smartphone to subscribe. Or, better yet, write a review and tell me why you love tuning in. And maybe you'll be featured in our listener spotlight on a future episode. I cannot wait to see you again, same time, same place next week. Wild blessings.